Welcome back to TTC, and oh boy do we have some chart topping specs for you. You guys really liked our first video ever buying a bunch of these cordless turbo duster blower compressed air replacement guns, and yeah, they are pretty fun. Some are rather good, some are atrocious, but either way, they always come out with out of this world specs like 270 miles per hour wind speed, and in today's case, RPMs of 180,000 RPM, 350,000 RPM. So we're going to compare these to reality, but also the first place spot from last time we bought again just to see if they dropped its quality, and against an actual bottle of compressed air that these aim to replace, since you guys mentioned wanting to see that, and against the long-standing champ DataVac, sort of the go-to corded air can replacement in PC cleaning, to see how they compare in airspeed, air volume with CFM, battery size, air pressure like force by popular request, how loud they are, and just sort of what they look like in use. The most affordable example we have for you today is Kukiho. This is the $30 compressed air duster that they like to call these. No real compressed air involved, but this advertises a 3,300 milliamp hour battery and 180,000 RPM. It's USB-C port recharging, like all of these on the rechargeable models today. Feels quite light for one of these things, and it is quiet until you put any sort of attachment on, and then it's pretty rough. We clocked this in at 86 decibels, the second highest to date, which is not a great rating. Shown here ranked against the average duster and also second only to who's currently in first overall, putting out much more air basically, that's why it's making all that noise. A brand we never heard of, like the rest of these, but did best when we bought it last time, and you guys bought so many of those that they sold out for a while and then came back in stock and have had a bunch. So we bought another just because sometimes our viewers mention worrying about drops in quality after a situation like that. So all of its data from today will be from testing both units. Back to Kukiho though, using a sensitive meter whose tube is raised off the table to measure airspeed and volume coming out of this thing, we take a measurement off the inside diameter of the duster and plug that into this gauge, and that gives us the air volume. In this case, about 35 CFM once it's in its highest setting, and you have to hold that down to use it. 34 CFM being the average to date, that's, well, pretty average. Each is going to perform best in volume wide open, but with a nozzle for focus speed as usual. Whatever nozzles come with the product. In speed, this one comes in at 135 miles per hour, a full 10 miles per hour under the average, so not so hot. A new metric today, and one you can feel against your hand and wrist, equal opposite forces and all, is air pressure at speed. Measured in grams here, the Kukiho makes about 53 grams, and that's not improved at all by the nozzle. 53 grams is going to be it. We'll also update past examples on the ranking today for our findings. But how does it all compare to the thing it's supposed to replace? Well, there's a few reasons we didn't dive into this last time, because the answer to that is, well, it depends. For one, from last time, some shots were blurry. That's on us. But overall, more clearly shown here, the cans do one thing just when opened and then another after a short bit of time, like even a few seconds of use. Unless you have a nitrous bottle warmer for your air can duster, these things get cold fast and drop off a cliff due to that air density changing. Even ignoring that, as you can imagine, there's not a lot of volume looking at one of these things. And here we're seeing, yes, corrected for its opening, just 1 CFM of air coming out. But speed, yeah, we're talking a lot of that, 155 to 180 miles per hour. And with the tube in, yeah, it's maxing this out in quick order. Some sources have measured these things getting to the speed of sound like this, which is pretty cool, but do you need that speed of sound, or you want more than 1 CFM? Air pressure or force tells us some of that story, which comes in at about 50 grams, which quickly reduces having to put the scale on at an angle here, because the snow show you get when you turn one of these things at most any angle. This is pretty fun, but also usually not the common objective you're looking for, unless you're just trying to have fun. This is what it looks like out in the world with some snow, water, and wet dirt, foliage. The cans do as you would expect, since most of us have used one of those. And the Kukiho looking a little more sleepy at this task. So far, I'd say we have some ways to go, but we did have to buy multiple cans just to pull off this much footage, so you can see the appeal in one of these things. Up next, before we get into the big corded guy and see what that can do, we have a name brand. Can't believe we missed out on a name brand example last time. Here we got Nitecore. Didn't even know this well-known flashlight name brand made one of these until one of you guys pointed out in the comments. And at 60 bucks, it even costs average or about under average for most examples we bought so far. That's not bad. What's fascinating about this guy is, well, one, it feels pretty stout, has a lockout button you need to get around from shipping, and has a progressive, heavy, chunky dial for power levels, so seems clearly made by EDC flashlight folks. But for us, mainly how modest its claims are, that's what's interesting. 98,000 RPM and 94 miles per hour. You can tell an actual brand name wrote these specs because they don't sound made up. RPM, for example, the Kukiho stated 180,000 RPM. We just drill into or remove these back screens after all the testing is completed and get instead on this guy like 88,000, 87, 88,000. Though as we know, RPM doesn't mean much. They just love to show off flashy high numbers, of course. The Nitecore says 98,000 RPM and we get 95,500, pretty close. This already showed full charge when open, but perhaps right off the charger, you can get around that. And miles per hour, yeah, this is when we do its testing, we fully charge them all. Even without a nozzle on, we get not 94, but 111 to 115 miles per hour, which can get up to about 165. That's pretty good, especially for something saying just 94. For total force of air coming out of this guy, it's able to nearly double the last one with 97 grams. Definitely putting up stats so far, and this is what it looks like when it's being used. Noticeably better than the last cordless. It's not bad. Okay, and coming in as the most costly example that we bought on the day, another standard that they should try to reach for is this corded MetroVac by DataVac. If computer cases are your main foe, this has the benefit of being made for the task, meaning things like minimizing static charge most spinny electronics will generate, so you don't have to avoid contact in that discharge. It's made in the US, and the downsides it does have are pretty clear. It's fairly large and you do need to plug it in. You can't really take it everywhere, obviously. It feels very powerful, more than expected, and rather loud. Yeah, this is the loudest duster to date. 88 decibels at 1 meter, getting around ear protection levels, and that has just one speed, on, and then that's it. It sort of feels overly aggressive for something to use around exposed electronics to a layman like myself, but that does gain it some sauce though. We're seeing 176, 178, and occasionally maxing out the 180 to 185 reading on this gauge. Not quite insta-maxing it out like the Wolfbox did in its highest setting and nozzle, but good enough for 180 miles per hour, we'll call it, and it'll get equal points on the ranking for that. What we did not call is the CFM. This has a large opening, but by their measurement, about on par with some of the dusters with no nozzle on, and it's seeing 60, 62-ish CFM. That is a lot, second highest we've recorded, but the way this thing clicks on with a bunch of inertia from that AC motor spinning up, its sound, the experience using it just feels that next level. It does move some stuff. But the force measurement here is going to back some of that up. We're seeing 186 or so. It does best with the nozzle, which is what separates this model. Some dusters, well, one so far may get more speed with a nozzle or more air total without a nozzle, but few are going to match the ability of this MetroVac to just force all that CFM even through a smaller exit like this nozzle, as the first and second Wolfbox we bought are coming in around 159 grams. Still crazy how something that small can be in the same conversation. Let's see if we can improve on that even further in cordless with the next two models increasing in price. This is the Licorne Turbofan Mini Blower, and it's claiming 350,000 RPM. Yes, it's on its way to 500,000 RPM, it seems, and only for 70 bucks. This is one of the nicer feeling dusters we've bought. This soft overmolding sleeve is more premium feeling than it probably looks. It's just nice to hold, and its interface is an easy one too to use. You don't have to hold down the power button for its high setting, which is nice. You can just click it up to its third setting, and that motor is taking enough juice even when fully charged to drop down a full charge bar level when we're at full beans. And yeah, this firmly gets into that fun arena that some of these do. Like, it may be useful, but also it's immediately just cool when you turn it on, which we accidentally found out a few times from this sort of thing, which is probably why they make you hold down the power button on some models. But hey, more power, less nannies is usually the more fun recipe. And yeah, this one's recipe includes some decent numbers, like in reality as well. We're seeing 60, 66 or so CFM. It often goes between 61 and 70, which is impressive, somehow beating the DataVac. And it's got some speed too. A few nozzle options on this one, but none of them are all that small on the exit, which is nice when seeing also 168 miles per hour coming out of it. That's good stuff. We also see about 120 to 122 grams of force coming out this one with a nozzle or not, which is nice to see for either of those. That's pretty good. What we don't see, of course, yeah, it doesn't make 350,000 RPM, maxing out our 100,000 RPM gauge only at the top of its max mode, which is supposed to be doing by its medium mode setting. It's around where we see other actual 120,000 RPM models do, which also made me remember that I saw this other model. This Trilby that came out just a couple months ago advertises just 130,000 RPM, which is more like what we're seeing here and looked awfully similar. And it is. Well, it's the same product. Reason we bought it being this was cheaper, like $55 at the time, sometimes even a bit less, but this was good enough that we wanted to find out if there was a cheaper option, and they do seem to be the same. And the reason we looked more into it is because it's also one of the quietest dusters we've tested. At this performance level, that seems to be pretty rare. The second quietest we've ever measured, and not for the usual low performance reasons. Okay, one last example before we rank these things. Rikka. This is the most expensive cordless duster we've bought to date at 90 bucks. This is another one that feels very nice in person, but mainly for like solid weight feeling reasons. It feels like it has 5 battery cells in it or something, despite advertising 3,300 milliamp hours and there not being room for 5 cells inside. The slide adjustment is a nice feature which allows you to keep it high as well, but can't say even fully charged it feels all $90 like. In person, it's not going to wow anyone. And by the numbers, it's sort of got a twin here, and not the one you'd be hoping for when you get your bank statement. It's going to register 35 CFM and also see airspeed at 135 miles per hour, just like the Kukiho, which is a $30 model. It does force out air with more pressure through that nozzle, however. That motor's not being easily bogged down for 76 grams, which is more. And it's noticeably quieter as well than that Kukiho, just 78 decibels. Remember, these are logarithmic units, so that is a massive reduction from 86. The Nitecore, the last one we haven't shown you yet, that sound level on, comes in at 77.5 decibels on average. That's very good, and it's also noticeably quiet in person compared to most. Which brings us all to here, listed in order of price. This being our second episode on the subject with new entries. You can find all of this now on our live rankings. That Rikka though, looking a bit too much like a $30 model, when at 90 bucks it should be more of a standout, I feel. Lastly, we have battery capacity. This is what they advertise here, and filling in here what we measured. This 3,300 milliamp hours was 3,300. Okay, this 6,500 from the Nitecore is the largest to date, and it met exactly that. Nicely done. That will get a 1 point for first place here. This 350k RPM model that we found under 2 different brands, neither advertised battery level, which is a missed opportunity because this meets a 6,000 milliamp hour total. And not only that, man, its charging rate. I don't know how it's doing it. I thought this charged at 3 amps, which would already be the highest of most things handheld cordless we've ever tested. But now it's going above 3 amps. I think this is like 3.5 amp charging. The rest of these are 1 amp, 1.4 amp. It's like getting warm because it's charging so fast. So yeah, at that 3.5 amp charge rate, it only took 2 hours to charge, where most of these take 4 to 5. This advertises 3,300, and we got, for some reason, 4,200, measured the same way as this one up here. They must have updated the cells. And then DataVac, yeah, you just pay your power bill and then it should run all day. We then rank these according to how they place in each column with all the models we tested. So first is best, and then ranked further down accordingly, but some models measure similarly and then get the same amount of points, which makes for an average placing, so lowest is best, a 6.6 for Kukiho, 3.8 for the Nitecore, that's quite good, 2.8 for the Licorne Trilby one, 5.6 for the Rikka, ouch, and 3 flat for the DataVac, which means overall across everything we've tested to date, it looks like this, with the Wolf box still edging out first place. It is good. This one, and then DataVac, and then this 300K model, which we felt was pretty good when we tested, and also this Nitecore. Nice. These are the only two to have beaten the corded DataVac standard, which doesn't seem all that easy to do. And this new guy is sort of doing this at a new lower sound level and lower price point than we've seen finish this high yet. And that charging speed's pretty wild too. Make sure you have a quick charge adapter to feed it. If you're looking at this guy, check both the links below based on what's in stock and that price. This Nitecore even probably the best or tied for first with overall design, fit, and finish, and they don't seem to be charging you extra for that. Pretty cool models all around today. Thank you guys for the idea to test most of these. We appreciate you joining us for this one. We make episodes every Friday. Join us each weekend by clicking subscribe, and thanks for watching.